So I read Nikolai Tesla's biography a long while back, and it was extremely interesting. And he claimed, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, that entire inventions, machines, would pop into the theater of his imagination, detailed out to the point where he knew the angles on the screws that held the metal together. And he would try to write them down in something draw them out in something approximating something that would be, that you could make a blueprint out of, let's say, in that much detail. And sometimes a new invention would pop into his head so quickly that it would obliterate the previous one. He had to work very quickly to keep up. All the enthusiasm and excitement and hope and curiosity, essential meaning in life, all of that is experienced in relationship to a goal. When you see yourself moving towards a goal, then you're inspired. You have hope, you have enthusiasm, you have energy. You can communicate effectively and enthusiastically. No goal, you have none of that. No vision, no goal. To determine when you were being inauthentic or non-congruent. And I've thought about this for a long time and tried to sort it out in a practical manner. And what I've concluded is this. You can try this for a couple of weeks. It's an extremely interesting exercise. So you sort of have to detach yourself from your thoughts and what you say. So you got to you start by assuming that what you say and what you think is not necessarily you. And of course, that's just the case, because a lot of what you think, in fact, most of what you think and most of what you say are the opinions of other people. They're things you've read or things people have told you. That's a benefit in some ways because you get all those thoughts that other people have spent a long time formulating, but it's a disadvantage in that it's not exactly you. Okay, so you detach yourself from that. You're no longer your thoughts or the things that you say, or maybe you're no longer all of them. And now what you're going to try to find out is which of your thoughts and things that you say are you, and maybe so you can not utilize the rest, or maybe so that you can correct the rest, because they're not representative of yourself as an integrated being. They don't take everything into account. When the depression and anxiety come along, you think part of it with depression, it's just bloody endurance. It's like you get up and you work through the next hour. You try to stay on track. You try to implement your strategic plans to the best of your ability. And you hope and you pray that you'll get through it. You'll get through it and that the darkness will recede. And you stay on track. You eat even though you're not hungry. You get up even though you want to stay in bed. You interact with people even though you'd rather be alone. And it's the benefit of disciplined habits can sustain you. It's like the boat you're rowing in through a terrible storm, leaks and all, and maybe you'll be overwhelmed, but you have the boat and you can row forward, and that's what you've got. And so endurance is a huge part of it. And then I would say with its anxiety, it's the same thing. What is your advice for people that aren't very social and have a hard time making friends? Get the hell out there and practice, man. I had a client, very introverted, very badly served by her parents, not very well socialized, extremely socially anxious, quite isolated person and terrified of social interactions. Like she couldn't even go out and have a coffee with me as her therapist as a practice exercise when we first met. And man, she's made progress like you wouldn't believe. Doing public appearances on stage even. If you're not very social and you get self-conscious, you start thinking about yourself and how stupid you are, that's a really bad idea. It isn't that you have to stop being nervous, because that isn't going to work. What you have to do is start paying more attention to the other person. You have to force your attention outward. And you can ask people questions. Listen to them. And when they say something interesting or they say something you don't understand, ask them a question. And people love that, man, because they know you're listening to them, and people love being listened to. If you're afraid of spiders, but you're wearing one, you're now bigger than your fear. And so you've even though you still might be afraid, you're also allowing that part of you that can transcend the fear to become the part that you're identifying with. And you do that constantly in psychotherapy one of the constant findings with regard to exposure therapy is it's not so much that people get less afraid. It's that they get braver. If you expose a person voluntarily to one thing they're afraid of, they become less afraid of classes of things. The psychoanalysts, they said you'll get symptom substitution. You train someone who's agoraphobic to get in an elevator, they'll still be afraid of death. But it turns out that if you train them to expose themselves to the elevator, they are simultaneously exposing themselves to the fear of death.
If you look at what predicts people's success across time, the best predictor is IQ. This is where psychology is actually reliable as a science. And that accounts for about 25% of the differences in outcome between people. So a lot's left unexplained, right? 75%, but 25% is a lot. The next best predictor is conscientiousness, and it accounts for about 5 to 9%, which again leaves a lot unexplained, but it's not nothing. And then the third one is how sensitive you are to negative emotion, and it accounts for something like 3 to 4%. So it is definitely the case that if you took two people that are equal in some valuable domain, the one that works harder is going to do better, and that might even compound over time. But if you take two people of radically different IQ and they both work equally hard, the person with the higher IQ is going to crush the person with the lower IQ.
The best way to teach people critical thinking is to teach them to write, because there's no difference between that and thinking. And one of the things that just blows me away about universities is that no one ever tells students why they should write something. Well, why are you writing? Well, you need the grade. It's like, no, you need to learn to think, because thinking makes you act effectively in the world. Thinking makes you win the battles you undertake, and those could be battles for good things. If you can think and speak and write, you are absolutely deadly. Nothing can get in your way. So that's why you learn to write. And if you can formulate your arguments coherently and make a presentation, if you can speak to people, if you can lay out a proposal, God, people give you money, they give you opportunities, you have influence. That's what you're at university for. Teach people to be articulate, because that's the most dangerous thing you can possibly be. So, and that's motivating if people know that. It's like, here's your sword, here's your M16, right? Here's your bulletproof vest. Learn how to use it.
And so if you tell young men, look, you're going to find the meaning in your life by adopting maximal responsibility, right? That's going to be extremely difficult because you're so bloody useless. You can't even get your own house in order. And you're going to be called upon not only to get your house in order, but to do that well enough so some woman can stand having you around for more than like 15 minutes in the back of a car. And then maybe you're going to have to do it so that you could be a good father to a family and a pillar of the community. And that's not just empty words. It's like, if you do that nobly, there'll be something to you. And then when the storms come, you won't be blown over by the first 4-foot wave.
The conservative approach seems to me to be something more like the pursuit of responsibility in humble micro domains. To set yourself right, you should try to set your family relationships right, and maybe to establish a family. And having established a certain degree of harmony and functionality in your family, then maybe you could extend out a few tentacles into the surrounding civic community, and you could build from the bottom up. You could build a stable life and a stable social life, and then a stable political life, let's say, from the bottom up. One of the things that I've been heartened by is the fact that if you lay out those arguments to young people, you say, look, you need to be embedded in a social surround and you need to take responsibility for it. And the reason you need that is because that's where you're going to find the purpose of your life. That sounds to me like an echo of this biblical insistence that there actually is something for human beings to do, as long as they don't bite off more than they can chew and get all prideful about it.
And the other thing that's so interesting about being alive is that you're all in. No matter what you do, you're all in. This is going to kill you. So I think you might as well play the most magnificent game you can while you're waiting. Because do you have anything better to do? Really? Why not pick the best thing possible that you could do? Because you're more powerful than you think. Way more powerful than you think. I mean, God only knows what you are in the final analysis. You're blind to your own weaknesses, but you're also blind to your own strengths. It's like, how far could you take that? If you stopped wasting time, and if you stopped lying, and if you oriented yourself to the highest possible good that you could conceive of, and you committed to that, how much good could you do? Well, I would say, why don't you find out?